We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. Acknowledge a harsh truth. There is no excellencies. This UN climate conference is a reminder that the answer is in our hands. And the clock is ticking. We are in the fight of our lives and we are losing. Greenhouse gas emissions keep growing. Global temperatures keep rising. And our planet is fast approaching tipping points that will make climate chaos irreversible. Environ 3,5 milliards de personnes vivent dans des pays hautement. We are getting dangerously close to the point of no return. And to avoid that dire fate, all G20 countries must accelerate their transition now in this decade.
That was United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. We're on the highway to climate hell. My guests are joining me right now. I have in the studio Igwe BK Joma, who is the board member, Climate Strategist Think Tank UK. Welcome.
Thank you, Nancy.
And I have Dr. Paul Abolo, who is the president of Eco Logistics. He joins us virtually. Dr. Abolo, welcome, and thank you for being on the show this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy, for having me.
Now,
and hello, Professor Wibuke.
Okay, let me start with Dr. Abolo there. We heard the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, say that we are all on the highway to climate hell. He said that yesterday, and it really pricked my conscience. What do you think has happened between COP26 and COP27? Because a whole lot has happened internationally, locally, in the environment space. Here in Nigeria, we've had our own fair share. How do you assess between COP26 and COP27? The alarm this time is actually greater than last year.
Yes, the alarm by the Secretary General is real and it's realistic. At COP26, we had very high hopes. We had huge ambitions. Nations treated their NDCs. Nigeria came up with a revised NDC. Even for Nigeria, we had improved from 45 to 47% for the conditional emission reduction target. A whole lot happened at COP26 that looked very beautiful, as if we were on track. But between COP26 and COP27, a whole lot of stuff happened that is making it look like we are actually in a climate emergency. Now, one of the major things that happened globally is the Russia-Ukraine war that impacted the energy source. So you find that all the plans that nations had in Europe about climate change emissions, they had to renege on most of them because there is an existential need for energy, especially approaching the winter. So that has thrown off a whole lot of stuff out of balance on the global scale. But on the national scale, Nigeria has made a tremendous improvement between COP26 and now. Within the year, as a matter of fact, a few days after coming back from COP26, the president signed into law the Nigerian Climate Change Act. That was one good one. Then subsequently, we launched the Energy Transition Plan, which is estimated to cost about $410 billion to do this transition. Then at COP26, it was stated categorically that Nigeria is more of a gas-producing country than an oil-producing country. What that signified was that we are going to leverage on gas for our net zero target of 2060, and we stated that by 2040, between now and 2040, we reach heavily on gas for that transition. Subsequently, we started seeing a lot of changes in our economic landscape. The NNPC became privatized, and NNPC is transiting from oil and gas company to an energy company. You see that happening with OND, you see that happened already with Total. That means that Nigeria is truly engaging in a climate-resilient development pathways. Now, this is for Nigeria, but how does the global picture play? That is what we're going to discuss at COP27, especially in light of all the devastations we have seen recently back home in Nigeria, with a lot of flood in 34 out of 36 states. Globally, we see wildfires. Pakistan had their flood. So a whole lot of stuff is going to happen at COP27. But principally, one of the major things that we are taking to COP27 is that somebody has to pay for this devastation. We are holding accountable the countries that we are responsible for global warming, which is of course responsible for climate change, accountable. So we are looking at the issue of loss and damage and reparations. So that's the key issue. And of course, we are looking at climate finance. Okay,
Doctor, let me halt you at that. You said a lot, and I hope that we are able to interrogate that during this program. Let me come to Igwe BK. A lot of people will say that some of the progress we've made have been on paper, so to speak. Dr. mentioned earlier, of course, we saw what happened with the NNPC. We've even heard, even from the Minister of Petroleum Resources, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, that we are more of a gas-producing country. The question is, if we are more of a gas-producing country, for example, why are we not having high rates of people using LPG, cooking gas, for example, and we're having more people use firewood? The economic situation is even pushing more people into poverty that will not afford rising gas prices. I know how much is a 12.5 kg gas cost, or even 25 kg gas. In fact, when my people went to get it the last time, it was not the price that I bought the last time. So what can be done, especially perhaps from women's angles and all of that, in context also with what the doctor has said?
Yes, thank you, Nancy. I think we're talking about the internal contradictions that we usually see with the Nigerian government. What we have on paper, government proclamations, and what we see on the ground. Like Dr. Bolo said, we've had in the last 1 year, we've recorded some progress. But from, what you just pointed out in terms of the steep rise in the price of liquefied petroleum gas, it seems to have thrown all of those progress out of the window. Because we are talking about accelerated, rapid deforestation, and if we are going to get everybody and stop our women to be using firewood to be cooking, then we will be making investment in reversing that rapid deforestation. Again, we can also use gas to power our homes and offices and our industries. That is not happening at the scale that we need to see for us to be able to meet up with our even unconditional 20% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Again, but I think we've fallen into the trap of mitigation heavy approach to climate change solution. What do I mean by that? We've seen one of the milestones that we've recorded in the last 1 year is the launch of the Energy Transition Plan, right? And of course, we've seen the high profile, the promotion that have gone into it, the vice president leading on that, going to the US to promote that. And I thought that we should also have gotten our Nigeria climate adaptation and resilience plan, because for us in Africa, adaptation is more of a priority than mitigation, right? Even though that we are going to be using the mitigation aspect of it to solve our energy poverty. But again, as we've seen with the flood that ravaged almost 2/3 of the country, that climate change adaptation should take the same prominence. We should give it the same priority we are giving to mitigation, and not just in Nigeria, in Africa and globally.
Now, the question also is that, Doctor, I'll come back to you in a bit. The question is, COP27 is happening right now in Egypt. What do we expect to get from this really? How do we go from all the talk and all the paper to begin to implement even some of the things that we say we're going to implement? For example, we should be a gas economy, infrastructure. You need infrastructure to power that. It's not just going to be mouth, as it were.
I think the expectation, each time we talk about climate change, it's not just gloom and doom, right? There is a boom. There is an opportunity. Like the Chinese will say, every crisis is an opportunity. And we've not really leveraged on that. You know, climate finance, carbon finance. So even though efforts have been done for us to begin to harness and harvest those opportunities, but we've not really done very much, gone very far with that. So again, the fact that the price of gas is rising, is reversing all of these gains that we've made since 2015, and especially in the last 1 year since the president came back. We came back from COP26 in Glasgow. So it's very important that even if we are going to, I've campaigned for us to have what we call subsidy transition, because we're not going to have the energy transition if we don't have subsidy transition.
What does that mean?
It means moving subsidy from PMS
to gas.
What that does is that it helps us to invest in afforestation and stopping rapid deforestation.
Yeah, is it moving subsidy from PMS to gas at consumption level? Yes. Or how will it work? I want to understand how your subsidy that you're proposing will work, because if you move it to even the gas consumers, it's still consumption and it will still cost us money. So is it also to explain what you mean?
Now, you see, if we are going to move subsidy, right, from PMS and get it to AGO, because I mean, for fossil fuel, right, what I am, promoting or advocating is for us to move subsidy directly from PMS to gas to power our economy, right? The Nigerian economy is not competitive. So we are already running on a generator fossil fuel heavy economy. So you have a lot of pollution. Out of the 20 worst polluted countries, you have 4 Nigerian cities featuring prominently there. So, and you also know that we are losing almost 90,000 Nigerian women, 90,000 annually. That's the World Health Organization figure. 90,000 of our precious women, we are losing them annually because they are using firewood for cooking.
Now, Iwebike, I still want to understand, is it at a point that when I go to get gas, when I go to buy gas, I should be subsidized?
Yes.
But that's also subsidy. That's also for consumption.
It's not just for household energy, right? Remember, we talked about we are losing 90,000 Nigerian women. So for industries to create the incentive for them to move away from AGO, to move away from PMS and go to gas, we need to create that incentive. So it's far, far better than what we currently have. And it's far better than moving, because, I mean, if we have to choose between moving subsidy or putting subsidy on PMS and AGO, that was a fundamental mistake that the Nigerian government did. We should have moved it to AGO, because it is the AGO, that's where you have production in the economy.
Anyway, we'll come to that on a later date, because I still want to interrogate this your proposal. I seem not to be getting a full hang of it, but let me come back to Dr. Abolo. How do you think that what is really going to get out of this climate setback? We've seen devastating floods here in Nigeria. 1/3 of Pakistan was also submerged with floods. We've seen heat waves all around the world. How do you think that we can get out of this climate hell, just as Antonio Guterres said at the COP27 holding right now in Egypt? Dr. Abolo, are you still there?
With the issues of climate change. And something significant came out of that meeting. They touched on the level of technology that's ongoing right now that will help bridge the gap, so that whatever we think we have lost or whatever we think we are losing, there are underground plans to have accelerated technology that will help us bridge the gap. But that doesn't change the fact that we are still going through a climate emergency. And the COP27 happens to be one of the platforms through which we have the opportunity to.
Okay, Dr. Abolo, your network there is freezing. I similarly can get you well. For Iwebike, how do you think that this COP27 would impact Nigeria's economy, especially looking at the fact, let's talk about climate finance. Dr. Abolo did talk about earlier, talking about loss and damage. We've seen that even the rich countries are resisting to pay.
Yeah.
As it were, they are not even agreeing at all, and poor countries are saying that you guys have got to pay. US and China are the biggest polluters in the world as we speak. So how do you begin to align this really, and how it will impact the economy? Environmentalists like you and Dr. Abolo, of the fact that there's climate finance out there, but we are not even doing enough to bring them in.
Yes, the gap is actually at the subnational level. Right?
As the state government.
Yes, at the state government level. We've done our best to push this to them and get them to know that they can also engage. Right? If you recall, you see that the environment, because of how important it is our common denominator, and that's why it's on the concurrent list in the Nigerian Constitution. It's not on the exclusive list. Again, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, in recognition of this, also created a window for subnational governments to engage internationally as well. Recall in 2016, 2017, when Donald Trump said he was pulling the US out of the Paris Agreement. Subnational governments like California approached the UNFCCC and said, we are still in, right? And a whole lot of other US states followed California to go and continue to engage, and also to bring back home some of the advantages, benefits encapsulated in such engagement. So that's not happening in Nigeria. So the state governments are still state governors are still lazy. Of course, NNPC has not deposited money in the federation accounts since January, right? So everywhere now, at every given opportunity, state governors lamenting. But I can tell you that you have billions of dollars out there, but then they are not looking at that. You see, the feeding bottle system of where they send commissioners for finance every month to Abuja here to share money. They are yet to move out of that. How do you think that they can access this climate funding? Yes, you see, what they need to do, right? And we've said this on every engagement, every opportunity we have to engage with them, is actually to create pipeline of off-taker projects, because the money that we are talking about cannot go into any type of project. It has to the money has to go into either adaptation project, mitigation project, resilience building project, or even technology transfer project, right? So we need to build this for them. They lack the capacity. It's just for them to approach the experts and say, hey, come and hold our hands, and really, to go through this uncertain.
Even though some of them have Ministry of Environment, have they been interacting?
You see, the problem is multi-layered, right? The biggest issue at the subnational government is actually the governors putting people who do not understand anything about the environment to be environment commissioners. Okay. They understand, at least in 90% of the states, the commissioners of environment there do not understand what we are talking about. And if they don't understand what we are talking about, then you're not going to really make any progress. Okay. I'll give you an example. If you go to the states, they still license people to be cutting down trees for paltry sum of money. So if you go to, for instance, to Taraba, you see that we're having rapid deforestation there. If you go to Ondo State, and they are not replanting, yes, that's the issue. So we should really declare an emergency on cutting of trees. That's what the state government, the state governor should be doing. But the state governor cannot, may not really.
They will say if they don't cut trees, how will the women get firewood? Sorry? They say if they cut the trees, how will the women get firewood?
That's what we are talking about. The clean cook stoves, the technologies exist.
President Jonathan, at a time when he was there was a clean stove initiative.
Yes, the 9.2 billion.
Yes, I remember that initiative. Yes, just before he left.
Yes, that was how do I put it? You see, there's a difference between procurement. People in the public sector, they prefer procurement, and procurement is fraught with fraud. Okay. So that was what consumed that project, right? It was, it went into a lot of controversy and allegation and counter-allegation about fraud and irregularities.
And women did not get it.
Yes, and that was where that project
is. Dr. Abolo with us right now, so that I can come to Dr. Abolo? I hope you've been listening to what we've been saying. Okay, Dr. Abolo, this COP27 is holding on the African continent, thankfully. Sharm el-Sheikh. Yes. A very fine Egyptian resort. What does this COP27 really hold for Africa? Do you think that Africans are united at this COP27 summit?
Yes. COP27 in Egypt is called the African COP. If you look at some of the logos, you will see Africa there. The last time we had the COP in Africa was in 2016, COP22 in Marrakesh, Morocco. But that was the year after the renowned Paris Agreement. Now, this one is 5 years thereafter, and a lot of awareness has been heightened, and most African countries and developing nations are now aware of climate change and climate change impacts, and then what climate change has to do with their economies. People are transiting to green economy, here of blue economy, circular economy. We realize, like in Nigeria, that for our economy to grow, we must transit to climate resilient development pathways, green economy. Now, let's break this down for other African countries at our COP. With this heightened understanding and awareness, Africans are going to COP27 in Egypt better prepared than ever. That is one. Two, Africans are looking at loss and damage, which has been recently, as I used to be included in the agenda. So Africans are looking at things from a more complex and a more informed perspective this time. We are looking at climate finance, like Prof said. A lot needs to be done with climate finance. If you're talking about liquid stove, like I heard both of you talking about it, you cannot achieve that without putting in a tremendous amount of money, for the economy. So that is needed. That is needed to make things work. Climate finance needs to be shored up for Africans. Africans are insisting right now. Not only do we want you to meet the threshold, but we want you at this point in time to pay for the losses and the damages. So that's a greater strength. Number two, Africans are beginning to realize how interconnected their economies are with climate change approaches. Now, carbon. Let's deal with carbon. Carbon is the currency for climate change. And like we know now, the developed countries are still polluting, and because there's a heightened need for energy this summer, some of the coal plants are opened up and they are polluting. So what Africa is taking to COP is that, sure, you're polluting, but we need to hold you accountable to pay for that pollution, and that you need to pay that to developing countries who have contributed very, very low to the impact of climate change. So we are going to look at that at COP27. Then moreover, we are going to look at technology and look at technology transfers. And currently, good story is cool, it's okay, but there are more important technologies like carbon capture and the rest of that that will help us in Africa to properly engage in the climate change business, which is the carbon trade. Presently, we need to use our carbon as assets, use our carbon, the forest that we have.
Okay, seems that we're losing doctor's audio there. Technology. Is there a green is there a green opportunity for us in this technology space so that we don't lose audio again? I'm just joking. But doctor, okay, is it back? I can.
Nancy,
Doctor, your audio seems is unfriendly this morning. Let me come back to Igwe and ask you about this. It seems that we are all focused on even getting financing outside. Have we really thought about even indigenous, local ways of financing for green technologies. Prof also did talk about even the blue economy now and all of that. Have we focused on that? Then number two, how can we really even incentivize, that's talking about government now, incentivize private companies to be able to see that this is good business, and not just good business, but sustainable business. A lot of people have also said it's also expensive though, but what's your take on that?
In terms of looking at local finance, I think Amina Mohammed, when she was Minister of Environment, took the bull by the horn, right? And Nigeria launched, I think, the first sovereign green bond. So that was really an innovative way of raising finance locally.
Yeah.
I know. But the green bond program has run into some problem. And what is that problem? You can't raise money from the private sector in the bond market and use it to finance government
Consumption
budgets.
Yes.
Right? Because the government budgeting process is not efficient. Because these are money you are going to pay back. So that money should have been used to incentivize further the private sector in our technologies, because the whole discussion around climate change is actually technology transition. And that's why when you change the technology, you've moved almost 25% of emissions. You are targeting 25% of emissions. So then the National Climate Change Council that was set up just 2 months ago has a climate change fund in it. So these are the two major ways that the Nigerian government is trying to raise money locally.
Okay, I think we have Dr. Abolo back, and let me, end this interview with you because we have another guest, so I would appreciate your answers very swiftly. I was listening to the Prime Minister of Norway yesterday at the COP27 because I joined. I've been watching the sessions, even though I'm not in Egypt, but I've been getting interested in watching all the sessions. And he said something that pricked me yesterday. He said in Norway that they are phasing out fossil fuel cars by 2025. That by 2025, all the cars in Norway will be clean cars. I was also listening to Dr. William Ruto, the president of Kenya, this morning. I think this morning's address, and what he was saying about African countries and all of that. Now, where I'm going to is really Nigeria's position at the COP27 that is holding right now. President Buhari is not there. He has sent his Minister of Environment, Mohammed Abdullahi. What do you think should be Nigeria's stance at this COP27, and how ready do you think that Nigeria is to meet climate goals? See the devastating flood that we've had almost all over the country. I think meteorological agency also, the World Meteorological Agency has said that the last 8 years that we've seen have been the warmest so far. So what do you think about all this that I've posed to you, Doctor?
Okay, yes, the reality is that going forward into COP27, Nigeria is more prepared than ever. But let me touch a little bit on the electric vehicle issues. Yes, most countries are actually phasing out electric vehicles, and Nigeria needs to up its game in terms of doing that. I'll tell you one thing. If these electric vehicles are phased out, the cost of maintaining those vehicles are going to be 10 times the cost. So we'll be able to maintain the vehicles. So as a matter of fact, this is a great opportunity for us to leapfrog technology and begin to produce the lithium batteries that are needed for the vehicles and set up the assembly plants and everything for this transition. So we need to be at par with other countries that are transiting. But in terms of being prepared, sure, the president is not at COP27, but the president is there. The Minister of Environment is there, representing the president, and he's carrying the Nigerian agenda to COP. Now, one of the greatest things that is happening to us at this COP is that we have an increased subnational entity participation at this COP. Most states that have been devastated by floods are now willing to go to COP to pitch their issues, because what people didn't understand before this time is that the Paris Agreement threw the climate action quite open for national engagement, for subnational entities to engage. Even the local governments needs to engage, and of course the private sector entity, which Nigeria is not doing so well at this time, because the private sector thinks that it's a government thing, but the private sector is very critical in attending the COPs and the whole climate action. So Nigeria at COP27 is well prepared. We have a pavilion, a well-designed, beautiful pavilion. Several organizations and state governments are there to pitch and present their issues. We're going to look at the issues of flood. We're going to look at the issues of energy transition, which is critical and important for us. We are going to look at the issue of gas as a transition fuel. How do we attract investments in developing our gas infrastructure, which I call gas intelligence? How do we develop our gas intelligence? This is the time. This is actually a very important opportunity for Nigeria to develop its gas infrastructure.
Okay.
Then at COP27, we are also dealing with the issue of climate finance, which is the number one issue. How do we leverage COP27 and climate action to attract foreign direct investment into the nation? We are prepared to do that. We are doing that at national level. We are doing that at subnational level. And the few private sector entities that are there have been informed to seek climate finance, to seek technology support, to be able to transit favorably into climate resilient development pathways for Nigeria. The energy transition plan is a big one there. We have an energy deficit issue in Nigeria. So rather than just try to go back the old ways, what we are doing in Nigeria now is to transit, is to leapfrog into centralized energy supply. As a matter of fact, the world is going into decentralizing critical infrastructures, and energy happens to be one of them. You know the security challenges attached to it, having a centralized infrastructure.
Okay.
So now people are building green buildings, green houses, where all the energy you need for the house is in the house. You don't need to see the wires. I was discussing with a brother yesterday, and he said that after a few years, children will ask us, what were these wires doing on the street? When they realize that you can transmit energy without the wires. So it's all about technology, technology, and finance.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Abolo, and thank you, Igwebike. I heard Doctor call you professor.
No, I'm not a professor.
But anyway,
I'm not a professor. I'm not in the academia. I'm an environment.
Yes, I know that. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Paul Abolo, for joining us this morning. Thank you also, Igwebike Joma. I know that both of you will be heading to COP, I think, tomorrow and next. I hope that we'll continue this conversation when you all come back to see what we really got from there. So thank you to you both. All right, I've been speaking on climate change, COP27. The conference is on right now. It will be on till November 18th. Let's hope that Nigeria will bring something out of that conference. All right, let's quickly take a break. And when we return, my next session is next. We will be looking at addressing tax revenue challenges, and we'll be doing that after the break. To stay. This is Moneyline with Nancy. How vulnerable is Nigeria? What are the economic challenges that the next leader, the next administration would inherit?
Part of the strategy really is to ensure that people have money in their hands.
We also need fiscal policies and actions.
The aspiration for us is to make Nigeria a net exporter of petroleum products.
We want to steer discussion to good economic policies to the benefit of the country.
It is in difficult time that nations take decisions to build and build their country.
You either make more money or you reduce your spending.
If you waste time or you spend time, what you are doing is you are wasting your ability to create wealth.
We'll still be talking about Nigeria's problems because Nigeria's problems know the finish, you know?
We want to steer discussion to good economic policies to
Obunde Benjamin is an associate professor, Department of Accounting at the Bingham University. He joins me now to take a look at addressing tax revenue challenges. Welcome to you, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now we're talking about tax. Let's start with the culture of tax payment or taxes in Nigeria. Many Nigerians are averse to paying taxes because they say if we do pay, we've not seen what the government has done with it. We have a tax to GDP ratio of 6%, tax to GDP ratio of 6% compared to some other African countries. But what would you say that the tax authorities or even government can do to engender the payment of taxes in Nigeria? Let's start from there.
Tax is a compulsory levy that every citizens in a country is to pay. Even if you look at the history, even in the olden days, empires and kingdoms were living on tax. And any country that wants to progress must have a good system of tax collection and mobilization to meet up its services or with health or infrastructure. So every citizen is entitled to pay tax. You can see, even in the Bible days, people came to ask Jesus whether they should pay tax. And say, well, whose call is this? Caesar. Give Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. So every region does not condemn tax. Everybody has to pay tax. So the tax system in Nigeria need to be put in place to see that every taxable adult, every corporate soldier entitled to pay tax.
Now the question is, where government is getting taxes from now, VAT, withholding tax, TIT, more is still said to be done through for PIT, because most of these taxes are taken from source. Are they being paid?
Yes, because most of the taxes you have mentioned, those ones, they deduct from source. But every corporate soldier entitled to pay tax must pay tax.
Now the question is, where government is getting taxes from now? VAT, withholding tax. More is still said to be done through for PIT, because most of this taxes are taken.
There are a lot of other
government can do to
taxes there. The government should develop strategy or automate systems that they will collect those taxes, because the ones that are being deducted from source, there's a fair solution. There's a reduced area evasion or avoidance, and so more effort should be devoted by government at federal level and at state level to see that the other taxes to this a technology that should be developed by now to see that they are collected, they are mobilized and collected, and then being put into the system to develop the economy and other necessary infrastructures that are decaying because of lack of tax revenue, which is the major source of revenue that every country, anywhere in the world, because.
What would you say about the call for a holistic harmonization of the taxes, especially by the Joint Tax Board? I've anchored different programs for CIT. For example, even was this ICANN had its conference just a few weeks ago, and also the call for harmonization by Joint Tax Board. What are your views on this, really?
Well, recently the issue of multiple agencies of collecting tax, which is causing a lot of problem of effective mobilization and correct collection, the federal inland revenue, the state inland revenue board, the joint tax board, who is the medium to mediate to see that taxes at each level are properly being collected. The harmonization of tax collection will be a way out to streamline the taxes that are supposed to be collected by the state and the ones that are for the federal inland revenue should be a clear demarcation. Like recently, now the new, before if you are a FCT resident, they say federal inland revenue tax is your tax authority. They now FCT to regard it as a state of its own. They have their own tax authority that collect taxes for FCT. So I think the harmonization will enhance for effective tax collection. And it can't just be possible without automation, because now we have IPPIS, we have Treasury, we have Genius. All those are computer software that are there to reduce some leakages or issue of payments or whatever. So taxation being one of the revenue that every state, every country depends on. There should be an attention of educating, bringing more technology, e-tax system, automated tax system, that every tax source of tax must be automated, how it will be collected, not passing through so many mediums or tax officers that there will be leakages, there will be no remittance. That has to be reduced.
How do you think that states can really, what they can do to increase their tax revenues, but in a very meaningful and humane way? Because we know that in some states, for example, a lot of business people complain about the various, they don't even know who to pay the correct taxes to. They come to your shop today, they say you paid social levy, you pay. Another person comes to me, they say you pay social levy, you pay. But I also understand that Lagos collects more taxes. I think FCT, Rivers, Delta, which other states again? Those are the states that really dominate in terms of Nigerians paying taxes, because I think in 2021, 1.23 trillion naira was collected from Nigerians as taxes. But there is that tendency for Nigerians to pay more. But we've raised that issue earlier, because you can't tell me to pay taxes when I can't see road and those social amenities. But what can states do to increase tax revenues in a very humane way? And I chose my word.
One of the major problems that states are having, our state politicians or governors, they lack the political will to enforce the laws that are there. Tax is regulated by laws. Then those laws have to bring into practical to employ or to train people that will go on the field to mobilize those tax and collect and remit it to government. In recent, maybe most states in the north or some states that are privatizing this tax mobilization and collection, because they have employed government officials to go there to collect, and they will fail the government compromises with the taxpayers, negotiating how to reduce their tax, so failure to remittance. So some states now they are privatizing it. They give some tax consultants, people are expert in tax, maybe competent, because some of those companies, and then they will privatize those tax with them. There will be an agreement. When you collect the percentage that you can limit to the state board of internal revenue. So the state board of internal revenue doesn't deal with employees that they may go there and come back with stories now. So they are always between the state internal revenue with the company or the people that are privatized to go into tax collection. Those people now employ their own ad hoc staff to go there. So as a private person, there is after profit maximization. So they enforce, they monitor, they give them what to bring. Then when they collect, they remit it. So, but then every taxpayer has an aggressive tendency. Now, because for this insecurity, even those private people to go out there, send their boys to collect this tax, they are faced with challenges, threat. Some communities, they mobilize their own youth to resist. Just as you have said, because they have been collecting this time. What have we been seeing? So even in that, it has been some challenges.
Okay.
But that is the best way that some of the states in the north now are doing, of privatizing those various taxes to individuals to collect and remit it.
Okay.
That is reducing the tension.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Dr. Bunde Benjamin, for coming today. Let's continue to watch the situation. But I think, was it yesterday or so, that FIRS has appointed MTN Nigeria, Airtel, and other banks to withhold VAT from their suppliers, from their clients, and remit to it thereafter. So anyway, thank you for coming on today's show. I've been speaking with Dr. Bunde Benjamin, an associate professor at the Department of Accounting, Bingham University. We've been talking about addressing tax revenue challenges. That's the show today. Thank you all for tuning in. Be the best you can be and be that change that you want to see. I am Nancy Naji. Bye now. Be the best you can be and be that change that you want to remit to it thereafter. So anyway, thank you for coming on today's show. I've been speaking with Dr. Bunde Benjamin, an associate professor.
The legal team and associates of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, will be breathing a sigh of relief following last week Thursday's appeal court judgment with discharging of all counts of terrorism preferred against him by the federal government. Prominent individuals and groups of Igbo extraction have called on President Muhammadu Buhari to unconditionally release the separatist leader. They argue that the government had lost the legality to keep holding the IPOB leader in custody and urge President Buhari to not honor his promise to a delegation of Igbo elders who may promise to abide by the rule of law. However, the federal government says it will explore other legal options. According to a spokesperson for Attorney General Abubakar Malami, who said the court's decision was only based on the extradition of Mr. Kanu and did not apply to those charges that predate that particular charge, which remain valid issues for judicial determination. Joining us on this show this morning as we discuss the latest ruling in favor of Nnamdi Kanu is Dr. Chukwuemeka Ezeife, former governor of Anambra State. Welcome to the morning show, Dr. Ezeife. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I salute you for your currency and effectiveness.
Well, quickly, let's go to the heart of the matter. Appeal ruled that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has been discharged. There were 5 issues for determination, and in the concluding paragraphs of the ruling, it was made clear that he's been discharged in fact of all